So I am really excited to have Miss Danielle, or Miss Danni, formerly Danni Starr, currently Danielle Epps, but as you said, lately Miss Danni and Mom are your most common titles. I am so eager to hear your story about your journey. 15 years as an on-air personality, now teaching inner city youth, fourth grade in DC. I know there's a story to tell about a mission and a why in there, so I am honored to have you with us today, Danni. Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive right in because I'm intrigued. Tell me a little bit about your current mission.
Wow. It's interesting because my mission has changed a little bit. When I started and I got into teaching, I just knew that I wanted to help, right? That was all, even when I was in media for the 15 years, media was always an avenue to help people.
Yeah.
It was, it allowed me access into schools that I could have never gotten into. It allowed me access to people that I would have never been able to connect with.
Right.
And so the mission has always been giving back, helping. But then the mission changed completely once I started to become a teacher. What I realize now, especially with education and inequity in education, is that the kids are they're not okay. We have so much work to do. We have so many more resources that they need. And specifically, kids in marginalized communities and kids in underserved populations have a high amount of trauma that they've seen, that they've dealt with. And so the mission now for me is to make sure that the people who are coming into classrooms are trauma informed. They have to understand trauma.
Right.
They have to understand how to teach to trauma, because when you don't, it's nearly impossible to educate children with such high amounts of experiences of trauma and ACE scores, which is adverse childhood experiences. So my mission is simply to really help people first understand their own trauma and to work through it. Because when we don't work through our own trauma, we are passing that on to other people, right? Now think about kids. If kids who have seen so much trauma and they don't even know how to deal with their own trauma,
right?
And then you've got educators coming in who haven't dealt with their trauma, it's just this cycle, and it needs to be broken down. People need to understand it. And so that's the mission. It's really having people understand, trauma, especially childhood trauma, and how that impacts the rest of your life if it is not dealt with.
Well, I love you saying, breaking the cycle. And there's the quote, hurt people, right? Absolutely. And it will just precipitate if somebody's not out there leading a charge to make a change. So that's a beautiful mission, Danni. How are you measuring your success on that journey? And I know that it's relatively new for you, right?
It is,
How do you measure success?
For me, it's showing up. It is, every day feels like research, because the mission isn't going to happen, or the success of the mission is not going to happen overnight.
No.
And so it's showing up. For me, the success is I'm not going to give up. I see these kids, the kids know that I'm not going to stop showing up. And they've had a lot of people stop showing up for them, right? And so for me, it's, I'm measuring success by the fact that I continue to show up, that every day that I do show up, I'm researching. This is all field research. Me being in a classroom every day is field research, because eventually, I'm in my first year. I just completed my first year of grad school at Johns Hopkins University.
Fantastic.
And thank you. And I'm so thrilled with what I'm learning. And eventually I'm going to go on to get my PhD. And my dissertation will all be about adverse childhood experiences and trauma, and being trauma informed. And so right now the success is simply all the research, because I understand that this is a long haul process. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. And so I measure the little tiny successes. I measure seeing my students when they come back from different different service providers, and I see that they're now able to express themselves differently, that social emotional piece. I measure that success every single day. Every single day, it's a little tiny bit of a success. Every single day, I'm learning more things, and that is how I'm measuring my success, because I understand that this is a long-term project.
Well,
And
most
so you
missions are, right? I mean,
exactly.
there are little missions and there are big missions, but this is a big mission. And I love that I can just hear your heart and see it on your face in terms of where you're at with really being committed to making that change. And it does require long-term commitment. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you have to think about it on a micro level and a macro level. Like, if I'm just going to look at it at a macro level, I'm never going to be satisfied. You know what I mean? And so I have to take those small victories, and I have to really focus on those little tiny victories, because eventually, you know, it's gonna, these are little races, but there's a whole marathon. And so I'm just trying to get to that, but understand that every single day is really a part of that mission.
Yeah, that is magnificent, actually. And I think a lot about, so I coach on a daily basis, and I'm constantly encouraging folks to celebrate the little milestones, because if you're just looking at that end goal and you're only a quarter of a mile into the marathon and you're thinking about when's it going to end, that's a problem, right? We need to celebrate the little milestones along the way. That's so beautiful. So this whole show, the premise of the whole podcast is about women who are in search of excellence. And I understand that excellence means something different to everybody. It can mean something incredibly different from one person to the next. When you think about excellence, what does that mean to you, Danni?
You know, it's not something that is set in stone for me, because what I've understood for myself, my mom used to always say that if you are going to be your own biggest critic, you also have to be your own biggest fan. And so I've been really good at picking myself apart, but not always celebrating my successes. I actually don't do well with pride. I just always am searching for the next thing. And so right now, my excellence probably looks different than what it used to look like. And I imagine it'll look different in the future. It's kind of a day by day thing for me. But right now, excellence for me is living in the moment. Because I am so good at not being present. You know, I'm so good at focusing on the past, or what I could have, should have, would have done, or looking towards the future. And excellence for me is being present in that moment and giving my all in that moment. Because if I'm focused on the past and I'm focused on the future, what am I doing in the present?
Right.
I can't be giving my all in the present if I'm worried about these other things, right? And so excellence to me is just really focusing every single day on giving my all in the moment. Not giving my attention to the past, not giving my attention to the future. It's always going to be there. The future is always coming, and the past is always going to be there. Right. You know what happened back then. But if you're not focused on the present, how can you be excellent? And how can that breed excellence? And so right now for me, excellence and really trying to achieve excellence is all about giving my all to the present and not being blindsided by the future and not being pulled into the past.
Well, I think that there's all sorts that we could say about that and what happens if we go backward or forward, right? It's not where we're meant to be. We're meant to be right where we are at in that moment, and that's why the expression one day at a time.
Absolutely.
When we think about expressions, affirmations, maybe even quotes, is there something that drives you daily, or it's something that you go back to time and again because you know it spurs you on?
Yeah, I have experienced a lot. A lot. It's crazy. Sometimes I look back and I can't even imagine like how I've survived so many things. But for me, it's the realization that your trauma can break you or it can transform you. And I have made sure and continue to make sure that the trauma that I've experienced is transformative. I do not want to be, I don't want to stay a victim. I don't want to, I think it is, there's something very powerful in taking it back, owning
Owning it.
that and using it for good. And so for me, I just continue to tell myself, don't let your trauma break you. Let your trauma transform you. And I continuously tell myself that, like, this is it. And I know that when people are in it, when people are in the thick of it, it is so hard to see past it. But as someone who has lived through things that people don't always live through, as someone who survived things that everybody doesn't survive, I can tell you that when you push through it, the other side of it is beautiful, and you will learn from it. And it's so hard while you're in it. And now I have come to really realize that when I'm in something that doesn't feel good and it's uncomfortable, I know that that's the stuff that's going to push me to be great. And so I try to just remember, like, this is going to transform you. Sit in that discomfort.
Keep going.
You're going to be,
Right.
you're going to be a better version of yourself. Every time you push through something that you thought you couldn't, and let's be real, we've all lived through, if you are alive and breathing today, you've lived through your worst moments.
Yep.
Right? You've lived through your worst moments. And
You've
so I
made
just
it.
remind myself that you've made it through everything you thought you couldn't make it through. And so I tell myself that everything I thought I couldn't make it through, I did. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. Right? And so
Amen.
I continuously tell myself that everything I thought I couldn't do, I've done. Everything I thought I couldn't make it through, I've made it through. And I just remind myself that. So everything that comes my way, that's my reminder to myself. You've done it before, got to do it again.
And we all do. We got to keep going. The beauty of life, right, is that those things keep coming at you. It's not just the easy road every day, right? There are things, and those things end up helping with discovering what our why is and lighting those fires within us that cause us to do bold and beautiful things, which I've got to imagine there is a story with reference to your current why and how you moved from being where you were to where you are today. Was there a particular moment or incident that helped you with discovering your why?
It was multiple. It was a string of moments together. It was being a female in a male-dominated industry.
Mm-hmm.
It was being a Black woman in an industry that doesn't reflect that, doesn't look like me. It was being told over and over again that I couldn't do something, even though I knew I could. It was multiple things, right? But the biggest thing for me was that I started to recognize that what I was doing was detrimental to my spirit. And even though I was good at it, and I was really good at it, it's for me right now, if you throw a microphone in front of my face or you put me in front of a camera, I'll nail it, because it really is something I'm good at. And I spent so much time doing it, but it doesn't mean that it brings me any joy.
Right. They're not always synonymous.
Right. It's like, that's just not how it works. And so for me, it was little by little by little, bits and pieces of my spirit started to crumble. And I either could continue to do something that was making me miserable, or I had to figure out something else. And I needed something that was going to light up my spirit. And I had no idea just how much being in this school system, working with kids, was going to fill me up. And it does, in a way that I've never even thought possible. And so that's really what it was. It was coming out of denial, because I was making good money, and I was driving nice cars. I was doing all these things, but none of that was filling me up. And then I gave it all up, and I don't make that money anymore because I have a teaching salary, and I'm happier than I've ever been. And so it was really coming out of that denial of, like, forcing myself to recognize this isn't going to make you happy, and letting go of fear, because it is terrifying to walk away from something that pays your bills, that takes care of your family, and just to kind of step out on a leap of faith. But I had to. Right. I had to, because it was either that or continue to kill little pieces of my spirit. And I wasn't signing up for that. I was not going to do it anymore.
Well, I love hearing that. And you're right. It does take a whole lot of courage to look that in the face and be really honest. And I was talking to somebody just yesterday about how when money gets in the middle of that,
Yep.
how just messed up that whole process can be. But I commend you for looking that in the face and going, you know what, this is not bringing me joy, and this is not what I'm called to do. I can only imagine that based on the mission you described, there may be a microphone in front of you in the future with a message that the world needs to hear around this research you're doing. So
it's so funny that you say that, because that's where I envision it, right? It's like, it's not that I'm not using the skills that I had in media. I use all my media skills in the classroom.
I'm sure.
I engage my students in a different way because I know how to do that. But you're absolutely right. At some point, I envision myself really using my media background in a different way, taking it into being a correspondent about educational inequity or, childhood trauma and things like that. And so for me, that is just so important. And I agree with you. I think in the future, there may be a microphone back there, but it will be for a totally different reason.
Right, which will fill you up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm a firm believer in the fact, and I love that you said it was little pieces all along the way that led you to your why. And I believe that there's an evolution of things in our lives when we look back and you look at your career experience or your life experience or different things that have happened. They build along the way in order to fulfill that why, that current mission. So when you think about that and you think about, okay, this is where I've come, right? This is where I was, this is where I've come to. What roadblocks have you encountered along the way, and how did you deal with those?
Wow. Many of a roadblock. Well, the beginning was, even when I first started in media, everyone, when people can't see something for themselves, they often doubt it, right? And so there was a lot of people when I first got into media who were like, you're never going to make any money. This is not. And I just knew that if I wanted to be good at something, or if I was going to do it, I was going to do it right. I was going to work really hard and I would make it work. And so originally it was just like the doubt of people who were saying, oh, you're never going to make it in media. It's so hard. Completely. And then I did, right? So I was so happy and excited that I did it, right? I proved everybody wrong. So imagine how crazy it was when I was like, I'm going to leave media,
right?
Teacher. And everyone was like, you're never going to make any money. What are you doing? And I'm like, wow. So no matter what you do, people are always going to, have an opinion. And so multiple roadblocks. First, it was people. And I had to get their voices out of my head and just kind of listen to my own. And then it was mental health. I have 2 daughters and a baby in heaven. And I had 3 bouts of postpartum depression, which knocked me down something fierce. And that was really hard, because the sick mind is a liar. Yes. And the sick mind will make you believe things that you would never believe if you were healthy. And so that was those were devastating blows to just who I was as a person. And then kind of my momentum. And so it slowed me down, right?
Right.
And just, just a lot of awful experiences within the media world, just toxic masculinity and just, sexism, racism, just all these different things. And even when no matter, it's so hard to just even explain because, there were so many things that could have, and honestly probably should have stopped me. I just kind of refused.
Well, that's a mindset, right? I refuse to submit to anybody running me over. Right?
I always tell people that my biggest strength is my bounce back game. Like, I am the queen of bouncing back. My resilience is a superpower. And I really believe that I am, if there's one thing that I am, it's resilient. And that, the roadblocks kept coming and I just kept forcing myself to push through that. I didn't have a chance because the alternative is so much worse. If giving up sounds so much worse than pushing through to me. And I know that everybody doesn't feel that way, but for me, it's like, I'm not much of a quitter. And I do believe you should quit sometimes. I think you should quit a job if it doesn't serve you. I think you should quit a marriage if it doesn't serve you. I think you should quit things. So that's just my opinion, and everyone won't agree with it, but I definitely, and I know it's a privilege to just be able to walk away from something. So I want to name that. Like, I know everyone can't walk away from a job that makes them miserable.
Of course.
Because healthcare, I know all these things, but I do know that you owe it to yourself to be in a situation that you thrive in, that doesn't make you miserable. And so every one of those roadblocks, I just found it in me to push through. And there were so many, it's mind blowing sometimes. And
well, I think pushing through absolutely is a mindset. I didn't say that lightly. I mean, resilience, pushing through, continuing to go in the face of challenging things in life, that definitely takes strength of mind, right? Yeah. So when you think about that and you think about the listeners, and let's just imagine that there is a woman out there who is struggling, and they're struggling to get through, and we've had those days, right, where you don't want to get up and push through. What mindset message do you feel like is important for that person to hear?
I think sometimes when people think of pushing through or being resilient, sometimes they think of like overcoming some major crazy trauma. No, sometimes resilience is just getting out of bed. Sometimes resilience is finishing an assignment that you didn't think you could finish. It doesn't have to be some major milestone that you're pushing through, because everybody's situation looks different and the fight is different for everyone. And so some days getting out of bed is the struggle, and you just got to do it. One foot out, and then get that other foot out, and then push yourself off. And if getting out of bed is the only thing you did that day, that's enough. So be it. That's enough. But that is pushing through, and pushing through looks different every single day. And so you just have to remember that you're so much stronger than even you realize, and you're if you really think about what the human body is capable of doing, you would realize that you're a walking miracle anyway.
Right.
Like, literally what it takes for you to be alive, what it takes for all these different synapses to be throwing at each other and regulating your heart and blood and mind and breathing.
It's a miracle.
You're a walking miracle, literally. And so when you start to look at yourself and really think about yourself as a miracle, it's hard to let yourself down. It's hard to think like, well, I don't want this miracle to work today.
Right.
No, you need to walk in knowing you're a miracle, own that you are powerful, own that, your own magic. And once you start to do that, I firmly believe it's harder to give up on yourself.
I love that. Own that you are a miracle. Mm-hmm. When you think, Danni, about the biggest lesson you've learned, and I know there's a lot of them, but if you had to pick one in this journey to discovering your current mission, your why, what would that be?
I would say it has to be forgiveness. Because there's going to be many times in your life that you're holding on for an apology that you probably won't get. And you have to be okay with that, because everybody's journey is different. And so while you may start to vibrate at a different level, and that vibration, like you may be changing, everybody's not changing at the same time.
Right.
And so where you're hit with something and you think, I deserve an apology for this. And you probably do. You might not get it, and you have to accept that. And you have to learn to forgive, not for other people, but for yourself. Because when you're holding on and you're harboring resentment or anger or any of these things, you're hurting you. You are not, like, you need to forgive people for yourself. It's not about other people. But the biggest thing when it comes to forgiveness is you have to learn to forgive yourself for your own shortcomings.
Amen.
because we hold ourselves to these crazy standards, and what I've really, really learned is that I love on my people, right? I love on my people. When I'm all in for the people I care about. I show up for them. I love on them. I show them grace. And what happens is you're so busy loving up on other people. You're so busy giving grace to other people. You forget to show yourself that same thing.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, love up on you. Show yourself grace. Forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made. Trust and believe I have made many. And when you hang on to that, it's hard to heal and it's hard to move forward. And so you have to learn to forgive other people who have hurt you. Forgive yourself for the things that you've done or didn't do, and use that to heal. Because when you're hanging on to that, there's no way you're healing.
Right.
You can't. And so showing myself the same grace that I show others, loving myself the same way that I love on the people that I love,
It's beautiful.
that has been the greatest lesson for me.
It is a beautiful
lesson. It wasn't
lesson.
always easy, Carrie.
It's not always easy, and it's not a one and done process either, right? That's something that requires us, we got to go back to that well over and again, because life continues to happen and a circumstance comes up and you find yourself whirling in it and you're like, why am I whirling in this? Oh, wait, I need to stop a second. I recognize what that is. I'm going to need to let that go all over again, right? It's a journey, not a one and done.
It really is. Yeah. It really is.
Danni, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you feel like, man, I just need to tell these women this?
Oh, there's so many things to, I find it, I guess I would say that you have to believe in yourself so much that other people don't have a choice but to believe in you too. You have to show up for yourself so much that people are inspired to show up for you also. And it's not a cocky thing. It's not a conceited thing. It's not an egotistical thing. It's none of that. It's the unwavering faith that you put into other things, other people, that unwavering faith that you put into the universe and God or whatever you believe in, right?
Sure.
You have to have that same unwavering faith in yourself, because at the end of the day, if nobody believes in me, I'm still showing up for me. And I tell my students that all the time. I say, if you show up for yourself, I promise you people will notice. And eventually they'll say, well,
what's going on?
Or what's gotten to her? And they'll say, and you inspire people. When you start to believe in yourself so much, other people get permission to believe in themselves too. Yeah. And a whole bunch of people walking around who really believe in themselves changes the world, not just one person.
Amen. Well, that goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning too, right? And doing something for the right reasons with your whole heart. If you go back to your definition of excellence, right? And you think about showing up and being wholly present on a daily basis with your whole heart, going after your mission, people are going to be attracted to that.
They are. And not only that, but you're going to attract good things.
Right.
Like that, that manifesting thing, I really believe in it, because when I'm negative, when I'm having a bad day, I'm just sprinkling that negativity off to other people, giving it away. And it's not fair. I legitimately try when I am having a bad day. I'm a hugger. I am a lover. I want to touch everybody. I try so hard when I'm having a bad moment not to give that away, because I know it's very possible. Energy is so real, Carrie. Like if I am having a bad day and I come in your space and I'm just mean and negative, that's going to rub off on you. You can try hard, but I'm just throwing
I'm going to feel it.
Yeah. So, you just have to be mindful of the energy you're putting out, because you're going to get it back. So if you're constantly putting out positivity, and it's hard to do, and I'm not telling you to not have a bad day, have a bad day, but don't have a bad 18 days in a row. You know what I mean? Feel your feelings and then work through them.
Right.
Don't stay there. Don't get stuck. So many people get stuck. You get stuck in that vicious cycle of self-doubt, of just not believing in yourself, or I'm not capable of this, or I'm not that. Yeah, you keep telling yourself that, and guess what's going to happen? You're really not going to be capable of anything. But if you take away that negative self-talk and you start changing that. And as somebody who has struggled with mental health, I'm never going to say like, oh, just change your mindset. And no, there's a lot of work that comes into that, right? You have to do multiple things to keep yourself healthy and to do all those things. But I do absolutely believe that if you continuously tell yourself lies, you're going to start to believe those lies. So change the stories you're telling to yourself. Tell yourself that you're beautiful, you're capable, you're wonderful. Stop telling yourself that you're never going to get it done, that you're never going to make it through, because if you keep telling yourself, that never starts to become a reality. And then you're walking through a reality that you don't want to be in anyway.
So talk to us about, on a daily basis, what it is you do in order to keep that mindset growing and going.
Well, the truth is, every day is a little bit different. Some days it is not getting out of bed because I need to reset. And I need to allow my body to rest and my mind to rest. And I know my limits, right? Some days it is resting. That's what it is for me. Some days it is completely self-care. Get yourself in bed, sleep, because for me, it's when that lack of sleep is when I start to, when my mind starts to falter.
Well, sleep is vital, right?
It is so vital. And I understand that. Different days look very different. Some days it's getting outside and really, really just like becoming one with nature. I take my shoes off. I put my feet in the grass. I'm trying to stay grounded as much as possible. I read. I take the energy that my kids give me. Sometimes it's putting my kids in the bedroom and shutting the door to give myself some peace of mind. Yes. It's no day looks the same, but there's always time. I have to remember to give myself some time because, like I said, I'm pouring so much into other people. I'm pouring into my kids all day long. I'm pouring into my partner. I'm pouring into my family. I'm pouring into all these people. I have to remember to pour into myself a little bit. And so whether that be 15 minutes, you give so many people, you give your job 8 hours a day. Okay. You give your family so much time. If you can't take 15, 20 minutes for yourself, if you can't give yourself an hour, yes, you're doing everything right for everybody else, but you are failing you. And when you fail, it's going to start to trickle down to your partner, to your kids, to your work, to everything involved in what you got going on. And so, as cliche as it is, when they tell you, I never understood as a mother, I got to tell you, I never, ever, ever understood getting on an airplane when they said, always do your oxygen mask first.
Right.
I'd be like, and before I even had kids, I was like, what are they talking about? If I got kids, I'm helping my kid first. No. You know what the truth of the matter is? If you are not okay, your babies are not going to be okay. If you are not okay, your partner is not going to be okay. And so taking care of you has got to be your number one priority, whether you're a mother, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're anything. If you are not taking care of, and it's not selfish. And I think that people feel that way sometimes.
I know people do, right?
They do, and you got to get out of that way because you would never think it was selfish for other people to take care of them. You would say, like, you got to take care of yourself. You're running yourself into the ground.
Take a break.
Right? Yes, you got to take a break. You got to self-care. You got to do all these things. Meanwhile, you're back at home, exhausted. You haven't taken care of yourself. And so you got to pour into yourself too. All that love you give other people, all those pep talks you're giving to other people, you got to pour that into yourself too. And it will benefit everybody around you.
Well, I think that that's a vital daily self-discipline, just taking time out for you to care for you and to assess those things. Like you said, your greatest lesson, learning forgiveness. And what I heard was self-forgiveness. A lot of people lump self-care into, a variety of different things, like, oh, I'm going to go get massages, or I'm going to go get my nails done or whatever. And it's this tangible thing I've got to go do, when really it could be forgiving yourself. It could be taking that space to just think and be alone and breathe. It could be any number of things. So I love that. It's not necessarily one particular thing every day, but every day taking care of you. That's absolutely a beautiful thing. How do we help you on your current mission?
Wow. Oh, well, first, Carrie, you said something really important that I think I want to circle back to, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please.
You said that a lot of people think about, self-care has become such a trendy word anyway, and such a trendy thing. And you said that a lot of people see it as like, oh, I have to get my nails done, or I have to do this. And I think that that comes from such a place where when people are able to do that, they don't understand how much of a privilege that is. Everybody doesn't have that, right? And so that's why I think a lot of people struggle with self-care, because in their mind, self-care looks like getting a massage, or going to get their
Right.
nails done, or taking a vacation. Everybody doesn't have that luxury, right? But when you break it down to the smallest of things, and you think about self-care as just taking care of yourself, that means the basic things. That means drink your water. Seriously. Okay.
Yep.
It means get some sleep. There you go. Take care of your body. It means taking care of you first. It's not about all these other little things that you're reading these articles about, doing yoga every day and going to yoga. Like, that stuff is expensive. Yes, do
Right.
those things if you can and you are able to.
By
God
all
bless you.
means.
Yes,
Right.
go do it. But don't let those trendy words and those trendy things hinder you from understanding that self-care starts with you, and what works for you and what will nourish you is not going to be the same. Okay? Because I got to tell you, my sister, she loves yoga. She does it every single morning. My body is not made for that. Okay? My body is not made for yoga, but it is made for sitting in my little reading nook and reading something, or watching a TED Talk every morning. I love TED Talks. I try to start my day with the TED Talk because I like to grow my brain, and I feel like every day is a good day for growth, right?
Amen.
And so I try so hard to just feed myself and nourish myself, and that's how I nourish myself. That's free, okay? So it doesn't have to mean breaking the bank or taking some, eat, pray, love trip across the country so that you find who you are. It can start with the tiniest of things, but you have to pour into yourself.
Yep.
And you asked another question, Carrie, and I totally forgot what it was.
That's
so I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, I love that you went there, because I think that it is a really, really important topic, especially for women. But I love that you went there and brought it to just fundamentals. Like, this is
The basics.
Almost everything, in my opinion, with relation to success or health, whatever, it all starts with some really fundamental basic things. So it's beautiful that you went there. The question that I asked prior was how we can help you on this mission that you're on.
Oh, wow. There's a few different things. So I'm going to shameless plug first.
Please.
Because, listen, you have to sometimes. I wrote a book, and it's called Empathy and Eyebrows, a survivalist stories on reviving your spirit after soul-crushing shitstorms, which I have been through many. And you as in the universal you, it is something I poured my heart and soul into. And it is the story of being someone who has been really, really pushed to her limits, but also rises above that.
Overcomer,
Greatest bounce back game, I swear. I have a chronically ill child, and I have, it's so many different stories, but it really is kind of that how you push through, and how people can actually help me is to help themselves. And I know that might sound crazy, but I have 2 daughters, and the better that people better themselves, the better the world is going to be, and the better the world will be for my babies. And
love that
I have
heart.
seen, right? And I've seen craziness. And so better yourselves, literally help me by helping you. You know what I mean? Like, read the books that are going to push you to think outside of your normal thought process. Challenge yourself. I am constantly trying to challenge my own biases. I am constantly aware that while I am proud of who I am, I'm willing to grow every day. I'm willing to push myself further. And so help me by helping you. Pick up the books that make you uncomfortable. Talk to the people. Ask the questions that scare you. Force yourself to be in situations that you're not going to be completely comfortable. show up to things that are going to challenge your thought process, that are going to help you grow. That's how you can help me. And especially, it would be a disservice to not speak as a person of color. Like, there's so much happening in the world, you know what I mean? And people are scared to talk about things sometimes. And I understand that, because I'm scared to talk about certain things sometimes, but it's those conversations that have to happen.
They'll change the world.
You have to. And so for me, it really is, I try so hard to not just think about myself, to change from me to we. Like I used to wear a bracelet that said from me to we, right? Because we are humans, and it is human nature to be selfish and to think about self and, self-preservation. Self-preservation is a real thing, and you want to survive and you want to take care of you and your own. But if we don't think about the collective, sometimes we're doing us all a disservice. So help me by helping you, challenge yourself. Read the books, watch the TED Talks, show up to discussions that you're like, why would people go to this? Or that's exactly the ones you should be listening to. The podcast that you're like, oh, I'm not listening to that. Maybe you should. So I had a conversation once with Jane Elliott, okay? And Jane Elliott she was on the list of, and it was random, Carrie. This is one of my favorite stories. It was so random. I picked an Airbnb in Iowa. Okay. I picked an Airbnb in Iowa. I had to go to Iowa for something.
I was going to say, I don't even want to know what Iowa. Okay. Right.
I picked an Airbnb in Iowa, and I got the biggest universal blessing ever, because it happened to be Jane Elliott's Airbnb. And Jane Elliott was put on the list of the 50 most influential women of all time. She did the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment. She did the brown-eyed, blue-eye experiment right around the time that Dr. King was assassinated in her classroom. She was a young white woman who was educating children, and she wanted her students to really understand the impact of the loss of Dr. Martin Luther King and all these things. And so I randomly show up at an Airbnb. Jane Elliott is there. I'm obsessed with her because I've followed her work for so long. And they pay her $8,000 every time she speaks to college people, or they bring her in to these symposiums and all these things, and they pay her, and she's worth it. Like, she is an educator and she's got a story to tell. And so they pay her this. But I got to talk to her for 5 hours.
Oh, wonderful.
I got to sit down with Jane Elliott and pick her brain for free. And I was like, okay, I'm taking advantage of this. And one of the things that she said to me, or that I said to her, and she challenged my thinking, right? And I needed it.
I love those people.
Oh, I was so happy. I said to her, she said, you have to really push yourself, and, you have to surround yourself. And I interjected and I said, with people who think like you, people who are, I said, you got to surround yourself with people who are going to, who want to. She said, no, you got to surround yourself with people who don't think like you. You have to surround yourself with different people who have different views and different perspectives, because that's the only way things shift. She said, if you're sitting in a group of people who all think like you, nobody is shifting or changing or learning anything. And so she literally said to me, no, go have conversations with people that are going to make you uncomfortable. Learn to stay grounded in what you believe, because just because you have a conversation with someone doesn't mean you have to change your thinking.
Of course not.
But it's nice to know that there are other perspectives out there, and it's nice to know that we're all not thinking the same, or this is how we can shift. But it's stuck with me. And I intentionally seek out those moments now. And I know that that's hard to do. If you look around your circle and it's a lack of diversity, or you're looking around things, seek it out. Yeah. You have to be mindful of those things.
I absolutely love that perspective. And I've had a long-time coach and mentor who has helped me with exactly that too. And he uses the 38 Special song. He's hold on loosely, right? I mean, we have to go in and by the way, like you said, right? Just because my belief is X, whatever that might be, doesn't mean that I can't find other people's perspectives interesting and ask questions and learn. It's not going to change who I am. I have to be very grounded in my own values.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate and respect that of others. It's like you said, the only way we're going to grow.
And I think what you just said is like that appreciation. No one's saying like you have to shift your perspectives or your beliefs, but if you can appreciate that somebody else's life experience is vastly different than yours, and that's how they wound up believing what they believe,
Right.
you can actually understand. And the goal is not everybody believe the same thing. The goal is understanding. We want to understand. There you go. Seek first to understand. Yes, Carrie.
Right. That was my thought for today and it comes from the prayer of St. Francis. For me, it's seek first to understand rather than to be understood. That just goes right in line with that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need you. I don't need to press upon you my stuff. Right?
Right.
We're just sharing. So
exactly.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Where can folks pick up Empathy and Eyebrows? Is that on?
It's on Amazon.
Awesome.
And I did the audio version myself, so I recorded the audio version. So you can get it on Audible. You can get it on Amazon. There is an ebook of it. There's the actual, paper copy of it, and then the Audible version, and you can get it everywhere. But and even if you don't buy the book, just work on you. That's all. Like literally, work on you. That is such an important thing, Carrie. I had such a great time talking to you, and I just want to tell you that what you're doing is so important, because these conversations matter. And these are the things that fill my soul. Like being able to have a conversation about uplifting women, especially, and uplifting people. And this is so important for me. And I forget sometimes, because I left media for a reason, but I forget how good it can be.
Well, I hope that is, this was just a call of my heart as a call occurred for you and yours. It's been something for years that has been percolating, and somebody challenged me and I said, okay, we just can't,
rise to the occasion.
You do. Well, thank you. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
I so appreciate you.